Service is being grilled on Capitol Hill. She's already confirmed several key details, which we're going to go through regarding the Trump assassination shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania. To go through all of this, I have Dr. Chris Martenson with me. Dr. Martenson, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you, Stephen. It's good to be with you and all your listeners today.
So you've gone viral on Twitter and other parts of the internet where you are able to show that based off of the raw audio footage, it appears that Thomas Matthew Crooks was not acting alone. And so I want to get into that with you. We're also receiving information from nearly a dozen witnesses that there was somebody up on the water tower. There's so many things going on, but I want to mostly focus on the evidence we do have, which is in those bullets ringing out. And so we'll jump in there. What made you first want to look into the gunshot sounds and see if there was any difference in the level, the echo, any of that? What got you started on going down that route?
Well, Stephen, it was very simply this. The inconsistencies in the idea that this 20-year-old kid was noticed and then noticed again and somehow, brought a rifle up onto a roof within 140 yards of a president. I'm a shooter. I've been shooting for 40 years. I reload my own ammo. I'm a bit of a geek. All different calibers, rifles, all that. And so the first thing I did was I called some friends of mine who are in protective services and I said, what just happened? And they said, we don't know, because 140 yards they would never have left that outside of their bubble. They were like, oh, that first thing, this was local law enforcement. And they said, that's not true, that you would never do that. Their typical protective buffer, they told me, was 400 to 500 yards. And then outside of that, sure, have cops, municipalities helping out, and they're doing, first layer of defense, traffic, stuff like that. But 140 yards for somebody who knows about shooting, that is a chip shot. You would never leave that undefended. So it was that bizarre moment. And I said, well, that's really a sour note. What else do I have to begin to think about? And that led me straight into the path of saying, I got to go straight to the source data here. I can't trust a single thing that I'm being told.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the number one thing that people keep asking is like, how did this 20-year-old boy with no social media presence, but 2 cell phones and no real connection to like the business world, but 3 international encrypted bank accounts, not a lot of friends, not well known. He's in a BlackRock commercial as an actor. Like, there's a lot of things not adding up. How did he get in with a ladder? How did he get in with a high-powered rifle? How did he get in with a drone to map the whole thing out? How did he know to pick, the pie chart area where supposedly Secret Service was like, well, that's the perfect shot. Let's leave that vulnerable. So many things are just not adding up. And now we're learning that Representative Sheila Davis, who was a very rabid Trump hater, she was over his security detail. She suddenly, randomly dies within 6 days of the shooting. We're finding out that, they took Trump's regular team and shifted it over to Jill Biden. There's just a lot of things. Alejandro Mayorkas and Kim Cheadle both said that the Trump reelection team had not requested additional Secret Service. Now we have the paper trail that they had, in fact, for months been asking. Then we find out that Trump is the sole target of an Iranian assassination plot, yet they thinned his Secret Service. So there's a lot of mystery going on. But how did you get your hands on the raw audio? And then how did you start to analyze that? Because that's what you do professionally. You're a professional analyst. And so tell us about that.
Yeah. So I always begin, let me tell you my methodology. It's data. I only start with the data. So I saw a lot of people starting with a hypothesis, which is, or presumption, which is, oh, this kid took the shots, and then they start trying to back solve. I'm not even starting with that until it's proven where those bullets came from. So the only hard evidence I could get my hands on was the actual audio. That's the first. We didn't have any pictures, Stephen. Usually you get the picture of the dead body. They blur it out a little, but there's brass lying all around, so you can start counting and understanding. You understand what kind of rifle it was, what kind of scope or optics it might have had on it, things that you can start to work with to begin to understand what might have happened. We didn't have any of that. So audio was the best place to go. And I had a lot of people feeding me things, but also it's just Twitter, X. It's astonishing how much I would not know if I did not have that. It's really the place I go. And I have a lot of sources and feeds. So people were sending me stuff, and we got on it pretty quick. So then what I did was I would take the video feeds, pull them down in the highest resolution that was available, and then I would strip out the audio file, again, at the highest resolution I could, and I feed that into an audio analysis program so I can look at it. And some stuff jumped out right away when we go into that. Now, again, there's things we don't know. There's more depth we can put in there. But the first thing we could do is just understand that those first 3 shots sound just so different from the next 5 if you're standing in a certain spot, which I think gives us a clue. So can I show a picture here real quick?
Yes,
Would you mind if I'm?
Please
All right.
do.
I just want to orient everybody to say this. So this is the site here. And what we can see here, this is the stage, obviously, that Trump was standing on, that little red square right there. These are the stands. And we had 2 victims down at this end where my little red dot is. And then we had the death of Corey Compertori here. And so the idea is the shots came from right here is exactly where we would have seen Crooks's body afterwards. And then mysteriously, we now have reports that very explosively came out yesterday that one of the eyewitnesses, that red-haired gentleman, his name is Greg Smith, he said that he saw emergency service unit guys, he called them snipers, in this building looking down at Crooks at the time of the shooting. So this gets a little weird. Now, I have 2 separate audio recordings we're going to go over. One is taken from here, and this is in direct line with these buildings. These next 2 over here are very distinctive, Stephen, because they are off to the side of this building. And if we are to believe, and this is what I want people to listen for, is this idea that potentially, if there were 2 shooters, where would that other shooter be? Everybody I've talked to who's a pro in this business, there's a lot of people I know are operatives. They said, well, he or she would be in the building, one of these 2 buildings. So then you would expect the sound to be different, right? It might be a little muffled. So that's the setup. We have a recording from right here, and then we got 2 recordings from off to the side here. And the challenge, the opportunity here is just for people to listen to this and see for themselves.
Okay, let me clarify one thing before you do that. When you say we have recordings from, you're saying like you got like somebody's cell phone recording that we know for a fact they were okay, just making sure I understood what the blue dots were. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, fantastic. No, great clarification, because this is really important that once we have them located, we know where we're at. So the first one I want to talk about is this one here. This blue dot right here. This is as close as I can locate this particular recording. And it's this recording right here. Here's the sound that I've pulled out so we can listen to it separate. But first, just to orient, this is what it looks like and sounds like. Okay. Now, did you hear that? Did that all make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So now we're just going to listen to this. So now we have the orientation. We can see that the camera itself was pointed this way. It's held in horizontal mode and it swings over a little, but otherwise the camera's in pretty it's not like rotating through space. So we can't say the microphone's pointing in wildly different directions. Plus, when a cell phone is in video mode, it has 2 mics in it. One's for when you're making a phone call. It's very directional, and you want that when you don't want other sounds. But when it's in video mode, it switches to what's called an omnidirectional mic. So it's picking up from a wide range. So the first opportunity here is to listen if the first 3 sound different to you from the next 5. Plus, there's one last one here I'm calling 6. You'll hear it right at the end, Stephen. Totally different sound. in that last one.
Oh, okay.
So what did you hear in there?
So I hear what sounds like, maybe half a second apart, boom, 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 and then screams, and then something that could fire faster, and then a pause, and then, but it almost sounded almost like a slap versus a gunshot or something. Like that sixth noise to me sounded very different, but then the 3 and the 5, they also sound very different from each other.
Right. So that's that last one, that final chick. I'm not sure what that is yet. That could be a suppressed round from Secret Service coming in from a long distance, and that's the one that took him out. There's another sound a lot like that that's 15 seconds later. That's the final click. And so that one, I'm pretty sure, though, that is actually the Secret Service round because Trump's mic was still hot and running at that point in time.
Okay.
And we have the sound of that round going straight over his microphone at that point in time. And then 0.227 seconds later, we have an inbound thunk sound on it Crooks's area. And that's a perfect length of time, 0.227 by a 308 round or 300 Win Mag traveling, say 2,600 feet per second. That would give you about 600 feet, which is exactly where the second sniper nest was that was behind Trump on those 2 red barns. So okay. I'm pretty confident with that one. So this last one we're hearing in this string has to be a different gun. Possibly it's local emergency services unit getting a shot on him. But now they would have to explain, Stephen, how they were in position to take a shot, because the only place to do that is from that second floor where the eyewitnesses were yelling and seeing them standing there looking at the shooter and not doing anything. That would be the story.
Yeah. I don't know if you've read this or how are those upper windows from the building behind where the other shooters were, wouldn't they have seen Thomas Matthew Crooks looking towards Donald Trump?
Yeah. So can I talk about that real quick?
Yes, please. Yeah.
So this is fascinating. So this is the picture we're talking about, right?
Okay.
And Justice Coyote on Twitter reached out to me and said, hey, I think I can place that for you. It turns out there's only one retaining wall. So what we're seeing in this picture is he's on a concrete wall, and to his right is grass and to his left is darkness. So that's standard retaining wall where you'd have a higher ground side on the right and it's got grass on it and something lower. Turns out in that whole American Glass research facility, the AGR facility, there's just one retaining wall there that fits the bill. And it's located right there under the window on that second floor of the second building. So Thomas Crook's body was found here, and that picture was taken right there.
Wow.
Out of that. And we can see it more clearly here. Here's that retaining wall on Google Earth. And you have to squint through the tree, but I think you can see it even more clearly if you're willing to squint. Yeah. And by the way, just for kicks, when his body was there and there was a helicopter that showed his body on the roof, this window was wide open and it swings to the right. And this would have been about, you could have shot with your eyes closed with a pistol and hit him because Crooks's body was right here. There was somebody in this room taking pictures of this kid from that window. And that raises a lot of questions.
Yeah, raises them for me. Wow. Okay.
I hope it does.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I just, the revelation comes out that there was another team there and their perched position happens to look right where the shooter is. I don't know. It's really weird. So, okay. A couple things that I wanted to share with you and the audience that I just looked at is director Kimberley Strassel. She is refusing to confirm whether there was a second shooter. So yes. Representative Andy Biggs asked her and she would not. The other thing that I'm reading right now is they are saying that according to their logs, there was only one single miracle shot from the counter sniper team. So we only have to try to find one bullet from the opposite side. So what are all of those other gunshots that we're hearing?
Well, there is one other thing. The DA out of Pennsylvania a few days ago said that that one of the emergency services unit guys took a shot and is currently on administrative leave. So we have one shot that we know about from Secret Service, one from the local emergency services unit that are on record as saying those happened.
Okay.
So we have those two, and then we have the 3 and the 5 that we have to worry about. My best guess again is that given the sharpness of that, and let's just listen to it again. So if I'm right, and again, this is speculation, and you know what, Stephen, we shouldn't be doing this. This should be somebody else doing this kind of a thing for us, but here we are. Yeah. And let me get my clicker back so I can make this. This is that last shot we're talking about way out here. Oh, sorry. There we go. That last one is a very close rifle shot, is what it sounds like to me. One last time. Again, those first 3, very muffled. And that last one, obviously very, very different. So the theory we would have there is those first muffled ones, if I was going to guess, the first thing I'd be looking at very closely if I were in charge of this investigation or on it is those sound like they're shot in the direction of Trump. We know that first bullet grazed his ear, pinged off of a railing in the back. There was another shot that was really close. That second shot, it actually hit David down at the other end. And then there was a third shot, which seemed to possibly have struck him again. He has 2 injuries, but also there's another gentleman down there who was injured at the same time. So those first 3 shots were all on target. Very, very close.
Who was hit twice? The
possibly
fireman?
Dave. No, the fireman was killed in that last string of 5, those 5 fast pops. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So but let me tell you something about those last 5 shots were all very much on target. And this is one other thing that I think people need to be aware of and look into. Okay. And it's this. Those 5 shots, when we measure them from beginning to end, there's the time signatures of them off of that video we were just listening to. It's only 0.775 seconds from beginning to end. And these are what are called splits in the business. If you're out shooting, your split is the difference between a pair of shots. So if we said the first shot came out at 0 seconds, because that's the start of this whole thing, the next one was only a quarter second later at 0.256 seconds. But then we have a 0.188, a 0.175, and a 0.156. Stephen, these are this people at my gun club who shoot competitively do not pull off splits like this. These are really good. Like this is the splits you see on super pros. Okay. Plus, look at the fire discipline. First one, quarter second, but then that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I could live with that if it turns out that those shots were just all over the place, right? Because it's very hard to maintain muzzle control while you're firing that quickly. All of those did a lot, were downrange, and we picked all of those up on Trump's mic in terms of a snap. They're coming over, so they're within range of that mic, which means that's not something I would associate with a 20-year-old who didn't go to the range that much, who wasn't let on his school's team for being such a bad shot. I'm telling, this is going to be a little sophisticated for you, but those splits, that time, I would take that and show that to the best people I personally know who shoot, and they would go, wow, that's some good stuff right there.
Yeah. Like I'm trying to think of something bigger, right? Where let's say barrel racing with a horse, right? And you have professional barrel racers. They can get from one barrel down, loop around and back, and you time that. And then someone who's the best in the game sees somebody else do it really quickly. You'd go, wait a minute, something's really off, right? That's how my brain tried to make it bigger to understand, okay, those distances, those collapsing distances would be really hard to do. The other thing that I thought of, Chris, was, unfortunately, I started having heart issues after getting Delta COVID twice. So I've seen my cardiology echogram, and those shots reminded me of them pointing out hey, the distance here means this, the spike means a certain thing. And so you can see, or at least I clearly see, the first 3 look like a different heartbeat than the second set of 5. And you would go, wait a minute, these look like 2 different hearts. Like, did you introduce adrenaline? Is this 2 different people? Like, what is going on? And so anyway, that's where my brain went, is just the sound wave looks very different.
It's such a great point, and I'm glad you put it that way. So look at this. This is the first group of 3, right? And I'm doing some measurements here to show how I would go about doing this. And here's the impulse of the bullet traveling over Trump's mic. So this is a recording from Trump's mic down here. This is a recording from the cell phone near the building we were just listening to. This is an audio track from out in the audience. So we're just lining them up to say, okay, what are we looking at? And so you have the shot that gets recorded as a snap right over Trump's microphone. And then you have, this is the sound eventually of the gun arriving, because the bullet travels supersonic. So it comes first. A little bit later, the sound arrives. So that 0.22 seconds allows us to tell how far away the gun was, because we know the speed of the bullet. We know the speed of sound. A little math, very simple. So the first 3 just line up perfectly. But to what you were saying, Stephen, it's such an important point. This, again, speaks to trigger discipline, because this is somebody who's shooting on a cadence. Normally, you would only see that in somebody who's got a lot of training and who has, I mean, because can we be honest about this? I got to imagine that shooting at a president has got to be a little bit of a nerve-wracking thing. Maybe you're going to be a little jangly. I don't care. Maybe, you're on some kind of benzos or something, but you're 20 years old is the story. And you're just going to be taking a shot at the president. To have measured trigger discipline, okay, it's not likely though.
Yeah. Like,
boom, boom, boom.
Even Olympic shooters, as practices they still miss. And, but that rhythm that you're talking about is like, this seems like someone who's very in control of a gun versus a young person who's like angry at the world or blackmailed or, whatever the backstory ends up being. Something is not lining up, just again, based off of the data that we can see with our own eyes.
Well, in all of my gun training that I've done, and we do a lot of things where you set up situations, and it's, the goal is to get your heart up as fast as possible. And the reason, Stephen, is that my instructor tells me that if you actually get in a situation where you actually have to use a gun, you're going to lose 50% of your training. So you want to make sure your training wall is as high as possible so that when you fall back to half of it, it's still there. What I'm seeing here is 3 perfectly measured shots and then 5 exceedingly accurate, very measured shots. So whoever was taking those, is my theory, was falling back to their level of competence in training, and or this wasn't their first rodeo and they've been on the business end of this story before. So it's a little much, but the whole idea that this kid was photographed and they didn't see him and he's on the roof for 2 minutes and there's people everywhere. So I put the beginning of that video and they're like, he's got a gun, right? You would think that if you yell that anywhere within 140 yards of the president, they get him off the stage. Like he's gone. They don't, Secret Service doesn't ask permission. They don't come up and say, Mr. President, would it be okay if we remove you? They don't do that. They walk up, grab you under the armpits and you're gone. And, you get to hear about what happened later. So I don't understand what happened here on any level. It just doesn't add up. But I think the audio evidence gives us very clear sign, 2 weapons. And they were, and at least one of them, or maybe both, were fired by what is consistent with professionals.
Okay. I mean, my first thought from just what you said right there, the first 3 seem very controlled. And then the second set of 5 is a little bit less controlled, but still fast, right? It almost makes me think of like, hey, once you start hearing the bullets, now you start shooting too, right? If there was coordination between the 2, and the real sniper is the one that goes first, and the patsy or the other person is just, I don't know. It just like the fact that one of them is very controlled and has spacing, and then the other one is just So I don't know. I know you don't have a full answer. I don't have a full answer, but the information in that data is very, very clear. What I know in another video you talked about how it also could have come from different locations based off of echoing or something like that.
Well, we have we're doing a fuller audio analysis. There's a whole team of people. I'm running a citizens investigation on this now. So people are
Okay.
sending in leads. I only know how to do limited stuff. So we've got all these other experts. There's somebody's building a full-blown 3D model. I know there was one out on the net and everybody's like, oh, look at this. It's got millions of views, but they didn't tell us, Stephen, how they got their elevations, right? Everything matters. Like, so what we really need to know, because if we do this really precisely, you can draw a line from Trump's ear to where that bullet glanced off of the railing and just draw straight back, and it'll point to something.
Yeah.
So to do that accurately, though, we have to know the actual elevation. That the one out there right now, it assumes it's on a football field. It's a flat plane. Is that true? I know it's pretty flat ground out there, but does it even sink a foot or two over 140 yards?
Yeah.
Did they grade the building and put that, bulldoze dirt around and sink it? I mean, anyway, accuracy is going to matter. So we have somebody working on that. And we're fully audio analyzing. We're also video analyzing because it's really interesting. We only have a few frames to work with, but the very first shot that allegedly is taken, you can see Crook's on the roof and he's got a gun against his shoulder. There's no motion that I can see. It's like pow. No, there's no kick. Now, 223 doesn't kick a lot, but you would think there would be a little something there, and it looks dead still. But again, it's for 3 more frames. We'll work with what we got. And then we're doing a full reconstruction as well of all of his movements and all that. But you know what I really want? I need somebody who can get in there. If we could get cell phone data from everybody, assuming those people who are on the second floor, if we can show there's people on the second floor at the time we have that eyewitness saying, I was watching them watch him and we're trying to get their attention. If we could get that information and say, well, what was going on, guys? I mean, how are you possibly staring out a second floor when there's a guy down there for 2 minutes, right? With people yelling, right? It just doesn't add up at all.
Yeah. I asked another guest, do you think that they will do a Boston Marathon bomber like investigation where they started pulling cell phone video from everybody in order to get a picture from all the different angles, and that helped them figure out who the person was, when they came in, when they dropped the backpack with the pressure cooker in it? Like, I have to imagine some of that is out there. Somebody has footage of this guy walking around. They just don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that will come out. I know it's early in the congressional grilling of Kimberley Cheadle. Any predictions on what might come out of this other than her being incompetent?
Well, I think we got a taste of it when she tried it was so lame. The whole, that roof was too sloped. That was so embarrassing because that's a 1.1512 pitch. Like literally me and my buds back when I was in construction, we'd play Frisbee on that roof. Anyway, so that was dumb. But we have the real questions don't need to be asked of her. We now finally learned just this past week that the special agent in charge, the SEIC, was a guy named Tim Burke. Now, very hard to find information on this guy. I've got a couple pictures, but just a guy. And we now have reports of a mystery guy in a gray suit who apparently climbed up to the ladder to the crime scene, demanded that all the local law enforcement send him their pictures. And it turns out this guy isn't Secret Service. There's questions. Was it the SEIC? Was it a guy from ATF? Senator Johnson's on that right now. I think Maria Bartiromo just reported on that with him. So we have some mystery characters that showed up. We don't know who they are, but here's the big question. Like if I was going to ask one thing of one person, not her, the SAIC, if this is Tim Burke, Tim, why did you put both snipers 100 feet away from each other right on top of the president? Because I was talking with all these guys who set up these teams. They've done professional, corporate, also military, and also civilian politician protection. They say, look, the way it works is you have a core ring of people who are around the protectorate themselves, right? So these people all have pistols and body armor and stuff like that. Then there's another layer out, close quarter combat weapons, but these are your first 100-yard people. They're out there, they're watching. Your snipers are at least 250 yards away, and they're in different spots because these guys have 1,000-yard range. You don't want them overlapping too much. They put these two teams so close that their effective range was overlapping by 90%. So why would you do that and then say, oh, we were under-resourced, we couldn't manage this, pie wedge building carve out, which is the only other thing you would have to protect. If you put a team on that roof of that second building, it's the most obvious spot. You have complete 360 line of vision. You can see every part of that complex. You can see everything. Why not there? Yeah. So I would want to be asking the agent in charge, tell me exactly why you made this decision at this time. But to back up further, I had a guy who knows this really well, Steve. Hey, Steve, thanks for this. He said, I never would have picked that spot in the first place. It's unprotectable. It's a very bad spot. And it was whoever picked that or allowed that to go forward said he would have fired him for incompetence.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, I had read or maybe seen. It's all kind of becoming a blur just a little bit, but
sure.
that yes, somebody came in a gray suit. They believed that they were ATF demanding all of this information, and then they just like disappeared. So the mystery keeps growing, which means the conspiracy theories start to grow. And now, it's like citizen journalists like you and me that are digging in and trying to find out. I know that Senator Josh Hawley went there. The FBI told him to get the heck out of here. You don't have the authority to question us on this stuff. Yeah. And okay. Are there any questions I haven't asked you or anything that you wanted to show my audience? I feel like I don't know what I'm missing.
Well, there is just this one last thing that I thought was the most explosive thing. Okay. And apologies for the language I'm implying at the top of this. But this was a Gateway Pundit article that came out yesterday. And they were talking with this gentleman. I'm sure we all saw this guy interviewed the day after or the day of, right? So yes. He tracks this guy down. This guy's name is Greg Smith, tracks him down. And he says here that the snipers in the second floor section of the AGR building were watching the rooftop shooter as the shots rang out and did nothing. He said right there, I was looking at him. His eyes were on him, eyes on. And so in a better world, Stephen, this is big news. Like this person, Greg Smith, now should be on every major news channel. They ought to be saying, what did you see? Tell us more about this. And he described explicitly that there was a guy that he couldn't identify, but he saw that this guy had a tattoo sleeve. Okay. He saw that much was clear. Right. And so, we've all seen the picture, right? You see this guy with the big sleeve right here.
Let me zoom in on that.
So these were the shots just been taken. Crooks is dead on the roof. There's 4 guys, 2 in the black uniforms, 2 in the emergency services uniform. These are locals. And there's a guy there with a sleeve. These would have been the guys who would have been up in that room. And so obviously this would be like some people you have a lot of questions of right away, I would imagine. Like we know you took the picture from up there because we have the picture. So you were looking down from that. When did you leave the room? And when you heard there was a guy on the roof, how long did it take you to get back into that room? And who was it actually that fired the shot that we hear at the end of that crack? Who's the crack, right? Yeah. Pretty sure it's one of these guys, but just guessing. So there's a lot of questions there. And if we were having a proper investigation, we would already know answers to these things. But they won't even let Josh Hawley on the site. So that I have no confidence that the FBI is going to do a credible job on this. And I'm very worried. That's why I'm digging into the data so hard and capturing it all, because I learned my lesson. This data tends to evaporate into a hole and go away, and then you can't get it. And so I think it's very important what we're doing as citizen journalists. Very important.
Yeah.
Somebody has to.
Yeah. Greg Smith, if you're watching this, come on my show. I will give you a very fair interview. Just so that my audience knows, our private investigator has tracked him down. We've got his number. I'm not going to share anything because I want to be respectful, but we know everything. And we've been in contact. We've been told 2 or 3 times that he does not want to do an interview. My worry is maybe somebody's gotten to him or he's hired legal counsel that is telling him, stay out of this. This is a nightmare. But anyway, we know a lot about this guy. I've been trying to get him to come on. Also, the woman in the black hat behind Trump that is really calm, our private investigator, we know everything about this person. She is also invited to come on and be given a very fair interview. Also does not want to come on. And so we're being respectful, but at the same time, like, if you have answers, we need them. This is a big deal. And we want to get to the bottom of this. Doctor, I would like to have you back on. I know that you and I share similar interest in the election situation. I just had somebody on from Georgia that walked through all of the data that they've now proven. That was a great show. You and I believe, have similar stance on big pharma and the miracle shots. So I would love to have you on, but let's let this be the Trump shooter situation.
Yep.
In Butler, Pennsylvania. Any closing words that you want to say?
Yes, if anybody has any information, anybody listening to this, if you happen to have a cell phone video, you were there, you think maybe it doesn't have something on it or it's not important, it is totally important. And absolutely make sure you upload that to Twitter or some other place, or send it to me, info@peakprosperity.com. We're collecting all of this. That way, never, ever give your phone over to somebody who says we need to take this as evidence without first downloading those videos, because it will come back scrubbed. So that would be my advice.
Okay. Excellent advice. Thank you so much for coming on. If people want to follow you online, where should I push them to follow you?
Peakprosperity.com is my website. We got a large community of people. We're chewing on this currently. We go through COVID, stuff like that. And my name, @ChrisMartinson on Twitter. And I'm there all the time. And also I've got a YouTube channel, which is still up for reasons that are mysterious, but it is.
Great. Okay. Yeah. I'll push to all of those. Thank you so much for coming on and helping my audience understand this. I feel like we're going to get to the bottom of this, but it might be the citizens that get to the bottom of it, not the people that are actually paid to get to the bottom of this. I appreciate you taking time out of your day, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You